Howdy to my friends on YouTube, Danny here. So today I'm with my friend Hugo Harrison. Hugo very kindly showed me and importantly showed you guys how to make sourdough bread a couple of weeks back in Suffolk. It was absolutely delicious. I loved it. It was a bit of a labor of love. You have to put a lot of attention into the sourdough, but it's well worth it, and I hope you enjoyed the recipe. So thanks for that, Hugo. And some of you have asked Clara and Paula how to make the starter for the sourdough. So today, Hugo's going to show us how to make a starter for sourdough bread.
Great, so making a sourdough starter is really easy. You just need flour and water, strong white bread flour and water at a kind of tepid temperature. So into a large bowl, it needs to be quite large because we're going to be adding quite a lot to it. We're going to have 100 grams of strong white bread flour, 100 grams of the water. Using a fork, you're just going to go like that until it comes into a nice smooth paste. So all the dry flour is incorporated with the water. If you've got a rubber spatula, that's quite handy for mixing it all together. You basically want the same consistency as a pancake batter. So if it looks a bit dry like that does, just add another 50 grams of water. Mix it together. You want to try and get all the large clumps of flour out so it's a nice smooth paste, which is why the fork is good. You can use a whisk, but it sometimes clumps together, so. Great, once it's all together, that's smooth enough. Great. All we're going to do is get a tea towel, put it over the top and leave it in a warm place for 24 hours. So 24 hours later, we're going to come back to our bowl. It should look very similar to how it was before. And so what we're going to do, there's two things in a sourdough starter. There's bacteria, natural occurring bacteria, and natural occurring yeast. And all we're doing at the minute is basically feeding them so that they get nice and strong so that we can make our bread rice. So we're just going to do a nice little sprinkle of flour like that, just to feed the bacteria and the yeast. I'm going to cover it with our cloth again and leave it for another 24 hours. Great, so day 3, we put the sprinkle of flour on, and now what we're going to do is we're going to add another 100 grams of strong white bread flour and another 100 grams of tepid water. It's really important when you're making sourdough to weigh your water because it can be a little bit inaccurate. You know, if you're using a jug and the side's a bit worn, you might not get the correct measurement, so it's really important to weigh the ingredients. Great, so once you've got a smooth batter again, going to make sure that's all off the sides. You might, after day 3, start to see some bubbles and it might smell quite sour, and that's a really good sign that the sourdough starter is building up some strength. Right, once that's all mixed, same again, tea towel on, warm place for 24 hours. So day 4, we've come back to the starter and you can see now it's really active. There's lots of bubbles on top. And if you give it a shake, you can see it's much looser now. There's not the big clumps of flour. It's become a nice smooth batter. And again, that's a really good sign that we're ready to make bread with it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take away half of this starter and we're going to replace it with fresh flour and fresh water. This might seem a bit confusing, but it's similar to when you get a new kettle and you need to boil it once before you make a cup of tea. It's going to make sure that the bread is really strong and we'll get a nice voluminous loaf. So all I'm going to do, you don't need to be particularly concise with this. I'm going to pour half of it into this bowl, like that. And then to this, I'm going to add another 100 grams of flour. And 100 grams of water. You've got to give that a really good mix, just as we have previously. If it's a bit too loose like this, it's a bit too watery, all you need to do is add a bit more flour. The 100 grams of each are more of a guide. It's basically, it will depend on what flour you use, so you just want to go for the consistency of a quite thick pancake batter. Great, that's perfect. So just like before, you can see there's some bubbles on there, which is a really great sign. We're going to put a tea towel over the top and we're going to leave it for one last 24 hours. So after the last 24 hours, we've got a starter. So we'll take that off. Should be smelling really sour, and you can see all the bubbles on the top there. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to move that into a nice Tupperware airtight container. And we're going to leave that in a warm place. And then whenever you want to make bread, you just repeat the last step. Take out half, use the half that we threw away previously in your recipe, which you can see on the how to make sourdough video that we've done previously. And then you just put in equal quantities of water and flour of what you've removed. And that's it. You've got your sourdough starter ready.